So I have a business trip coming up and can't find anything that I like in the stores, so I decided to go ahead and make my own skirt to wear for one of the days. So I chose this pinstripe suiting fabric that actually has a little hint of blue running through it that you can't really see here, but I thought this was a lovely material to use for a simple circle skirt with an interesting waistband. So to cut a circle skirt, I'm going to take the fabric and fold it selvage to selvage. Selvage is the part of the fabric that the store did not cut, if that makes sense. After folding it selvage to selvage, I fold it in half again, this time the opposite direction, to create 4 individual folds. For more information on how to fold a circle skirt, I highly recommend going to the Mood Fabric Circle Skirt Calculator, where you can put in all of your measurements to get the exact dimensions that you need to cut, as well as a diagram for how to properly fold your fabric for the type of circle skirt you want to create. For me, this is going to be a full circle skirt, and I followed those instructions to fold my fabric appropriately. After folding my fabric, I go up to one of the corners with the fold in it, and I mark out my waist measurement. So I like to put a pin through the fabric and the measuring tape to help the tape pivot at the corner. It didn't work so well on this fabric. The pin kept popping out, but normally it holds itself in place. And I'm just going to mark with tailor's chalk an arc following the measurement that the calculator gave me. Next, I'm going to pin my measuring tape at the bottom of the arc and mark out the length that I want the skirt to be pivoting so that I can create an arc at the bottom of the skirt. It's important to move the measuring tape along the waist arc so that you are getting the right measurement across the board. And then I cut along the lines that I drew. And we have a circle skirt. I could stop here, add in a waistband and a hem, and this could be done, but I decided to be a little more creative with the look of the skirt. So I want to install a zipper. To do that, I'm going to find what I want to be the center back of the circle skirt and then cut the middle, opening the circle up. Now that that's cut, I just do a quick measure across the waist to make sure I cut the appropriate length waistband. And using the leftover scraps, I measure out the waistband. But because I'm adding in corseting on the sides, just decorative corseting, I'm going to cut 2 pieces of the waistband. So I'm taking the waist measurement and cutting it in half minus a few inches to make room for the color block that I want to put underneath the corseting. And for the color block, I decided to use this black satin that I cut to the width plus seam allowance to fit into the waistband. Next step is to create the straps that's going to hold the D-rings in place. So these are the D-rings. They are 1/2 inch wide. And to decide how many I can put here, I just fold the fabric in half to make essentially the waistband and then line up as many D-rings as I feel comfortable putting in place. In this case, it wound up being 3 on each side, so there will be a total of 12 D-rings on the skirt. And then I cut strips of fabric 1 inch wide and folded in the raw edges and tried to iron them in, but this fabric does not like to iron flat. So I pulled out the clapper to try and help crisp up these ironed edges, which helped a little bit, but not so much. So I did have to take this to the sewing machine and sew down along the length to hold the folds in place. Once I decided how long I wanted the piece to be that the D-ring would go through, I cut the long strip into smaller pieces, threaded it through the D-ring, and then pinned it to the waistband. I did iron the raw edges of the waistband in place to make it a little easier to pin. Once I had the D-ring sewed onto the gray part of the waistband, I lined it up with the black color block piece, pinned that into place, and then took it to the sewing machine, sewed it together. And before I added the back part of the waistband, remembered I was installing a zipper and needed to cut the back part in half. I did accidentally make this waistband a little too big because my measurements got a little wonky along this place, so I had to take it in a little on the black color blocks. So the finished part of the skirt actually has a smaller corseting than you see here. So I just aligned the pieces of the waistband together, making sure the D-rings lined up properly and pinned in place, and also took that to the sewing machine and sewed it all together. Once I had my completed waistband, I pinned it to the waist of the skirt. Because my waistband measurement was a little off, the best way that I could think to do this was to find the center of the skirt and then the center of the waistband, line those up, and then pin out from there to make sure that the color blocks wind up on the sides of the skirt where I planned for them to be. Now I always do this from the right side of the skirt, so I'm putting right side of the skirt to right side of the waistband and pin into place. And then sew them together. Once they're sewn together, I work from the inside of the skirt and flip the waistband over, folding up the raw edges of the waistband over the raw edge of the skirt to hide all of that inside the waistband. Once it's all pinned in place, I sewed it again from the right side of the skirt. Normally I would stitch in the ditch to hide this stitching, but I actually didn't mind having some of the stitching showing in a more decorative fashion, so I went ahead and stitched it just a little away from the fold. Once that was complete, I pinned the back seam together and also stitched into place. Now for the back seam, when I went to sew it, I started at the bottom and sewed all the way up to a few inches away from the waistband and cut my thread there. And then I switched my stitch setting to a long basting stitch and sewed up the last few inches of the seam. This is where my zipper is going to go. So once that was stitched together, I ironed the back seam as flat as I could and then looked at how the skirt was looking so far. And then I hung this up overnight to allow the circle skirt to settle and any stretching that may happen from gravity to finish up so that I can even out the hem later. I took an invisible zipper, which I only had this massively long one, but I can fix that later. I lined the front part, middle of the zipper, to the middle of the seam and pinned it into place down to where the basting stitches ended. Once that's pinned, I took some thread and needle and hand basted the stitching into place only onto the seam allowance. This is way better than pinning when you go to sew it. One more step to prepare before sewing, I took my seam ripper, which is this crazy looking Femore scalpel seam ripper, and ripped out the basting stitches from the seam. And utilizing an invisible zipper foot, which has this lovely groove that allows you to stitch incredibly close to the zipper teeth, I unfolded the seam and stitched along the zipper on both sides. Now the zipper is completely installed. I just need to add a hook and eye at the top to hold the top little inch in place. And finally, it was time to do the hem. I actually didn't need to trim up any part of the hem. It was still even from the night before, so I was able to just roll it up once and pin into place with a bunch of pins. The trick to sewing a clean hem on a circle skirt is to use a bunch of pins to pin up any bulk and then sew it from the right side, which is what I did. I forgot to record the last part, but I did go ahead and roll it up a second time to hide the raw edges and stitched once more. And that's my corseted circle skirt. What do you think? I think it turned out really cute. There's a few things I would correct if I were to make this again, but I don't think it was bad for an experimental waistband type thing that I decided to create. So I hope you liked this video. I had a lot of fun taking a break from my Sakiso build to make something practical and useful that I will be wearing in the next coming week. So if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to subscribe for more content from me, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!